to everyone. I'm Sister Anissa Batiste for the Thusia Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm also an Associate Director of the Thusian Institute for Religious Liberty Incorporated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm doing this brief live to say two things. One, the backdrop of why I want to make certain important recommendations. The name of my live reveals that I am saying that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, among the legislation and the enforcement of legislation that is needed as a matter of urgency are: 1, freedom of information legislation. We need a freedom of information legislation enforced in the land. And 2, whistleblower protection legislation. We need legislation that protects whistleblowers. Why am I saying this, and why am I encouraging this now especially? You know, for years, Thusia Seventh-day Adventists like me have said in public, have exposed in public the dangers of certain childhood vaccines because of the ingredients in them. Ingredients like mercury, thimerosal, ingredients like formaldehyde, ingredients like aluminum, ingredients like polysorbate 80, and other dangerous ingredients, including dog cells, chicken cells, even aborted fetal cells inside of the vaccines that are given into children's bodies as a tradition from childhood. And when we have showed research that is known in the world for years about these things, we have faced the bitter end of the stick, so to speak. We have faced people calling us crazy, say we are following quacks, we don't know what we are talking about, we are dangerous to society, just for questioning and exposing the questionable practices with respect to vaccination, including childhood vaccines, including things like HPV vaccines, or the so-called vaccine that they say could stop cervical cancer in women, when it is not true. And we have showed evidence that even women who took Gardasil, cervical cancer so-called vaccine, ended up with the cervical cancer when they didn't even have the HPV virus or the HPV, human papillomavirus, before they took the vaccine. Man, I remember as a upcoming public servant in this country, I remember as a servant of the people, I was traduced in public by people like Douglas Slater, who was a Minister of Health in the ULP administration at the time, traduced by people like Dr. Gerald Thompson, who calls himself an infectious disease specialist. I was told, and the world was told, I could probably go back in the archives and find an old Vincentian newspaper article. The country was told that I am following quacks like Dr. Andrew Wakefield of the UK. That man was treated so bad by UK health authorities and other authorities around the world. Call them quacks. They don't know what they're talking about. Snake oil, doctors, etc. And I was accused of that. People tried to sabotage my career as a senator in parliament to say I'm following quacks and I will endanger Vincentians and their children by bad-mouthing vaccines, etc. But yet, over the years, evidence that came out in societies like America and elsewhere vindicated me. Because organizations like ICANN, Informed Consent Action Network, led by the medical journalist Del Bigtree, with his program The High Wire, they had used freedom of information legislation in America to require and request, they call it a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, to require that government agencies in America tell the people the truth concerning certain things, answer certain questions truthfully. And when you have legislation like that, you have to answer. These days, you can't even get information from the government, because when you write and you ask them for statistics, okay, can you show us the mortality statistics? How many people have died since they took the COVID vaccine, etc.? Because you used to come every week and tell us how many people take the vaccines, how many cases, how many infections, how many recoveries, etc. You can't even write to the government agencies today to get information. If you check the recent book that was published by Sister Anne-Marie and Brother Shefflin Ballantyne, I Do Not Consent, sharing the Vincentian chapter of the COVID pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, you will hear they tell you that they try to get from the government statistics, and the government refused to answer. The government has not been answering. This is what has been happening in the country. Now, I seem to recall as a senator, and I stand corrected here, but I seem to recall that in my investigations, it is not that we don't have freedom of information legislation, but it never went far enough to make the relevant regulations to go with it, that it could be enforced. And I'm saying that has to stop. That has to stop. The people have rights given to them by God, and for those rights to be protected, you need freedom of information. You need access to information that could tell you what is happening. You paying governments, they are accountable to you. You need freedom to information to assess what they are doing. Otherwise, they tend to hide information. And freedom of information legislation allows you to be able to request the information, and they're supposed to give it to you. Now, what is the latest news? Why that shows the importance of such legislation? And I want to say, even this latest news here, it's not that it has not been confessed before. If you check my Facebook page right now, Anissa Batiste, you will find that in the Anissa Batiste Facebook page, I remind you, for example, that over the years, we knew that the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in America, knew that childhood vaccines have contributed to autism. They kept telling the world, oh, vaccines don't cause autism. Vaccines don't cause autism. They kept telling the world that. But when ICANN of Delbecq Tree wrote to CDC years ago, about 6 years ago, they've been doing work, and they wrote to them to ask them for the scientific studies and evidence which proves that vaccines don't cause autism. You know what the CDC did? They couldn't show you any scientific evidence. So for a long time now, I have known this. I posted, if you look back on my page, you will see some posts I made from all 2019. Okay, and before that, but I just posted back some of my past posts to remind you. I researched the subject. I bought books. One of the books I have is called Vaccine Whistleblower, Exposing Autism Research Fraud at the CDC, by Kevin Barry, and the foreword by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who today, by the way, is the HHS, or the Health and Human Services Secretary in America under the Donald Trump administration. And I said here, the education or information continues. Did you know a CDC doctor exposed the corruption there, hiding and destroying evidence that vaccines are linked to autism in children? Vaccine Whistleblower exposes legally recorded conversation with CDC Dr. William Thompson. I posted that in 2019. I did a live. I read from the book, and I showed people that, hey, the CDC is covering up things. You can't trust these agencies. They have us in a lot of problems today because our governments traditionally trust CDC, trust FDA, trust PAHO, trust CAFA, and they don't do their independent research to determine what they're putting into our people. And when persons like me speak out against it, we get the bad end of the stick. They call us crazy. They call us conspiracy theorists. They call us wicked. They say we want to hurt your children and all kind of evils. When the reality is we've been telling you the truth all these years. So just recently, ICANN proved from their Freedom of Information requests to CDC that CDC doesn't have evidence that vaccines don't cause autism. I remember again posting in 2024 a Substack by a guy called Steve Kirsch, a researcher, called Over 300 Pages of Evidence from the CDC Show that Vaccines Cause Autism. And I remember saying, hey, Dr. Andrew Wakefield of the UK is vindicated. I remember parliamentarians going to tongue on me, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Slater before him. Where are they now? Well, here is the breaking news. It's not that CDC has not confessed these things before. They had to confess them because of freedom of information requests. But the breaking news now is this. McCullough Foundation broke the news today with the epidemiologist Nicholas Hulsher, whom I follow. I have personal contact with Dr. Peter McCullough, the greatest and the most widest published cardiologist in the world on the COVID-19 issue and how it affects the heart. I've personally invited him to be on our Tucson Institute for Religious Liberty Incorporated program to speak about the dangers of the COVID vaccine. I have his WhatsApp. We talk. I could send him things. I could ask him things. He send me things. I contact other doctors like Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, get their number directly from Dr. McCullough. When the teachers union and the public service union and the police welfare case was going on with Jomo Thomas, Zita Barnwell and other lawyers, Mr. Thomas reached out to me, asking me to help them get scientific experts, because they were going to try to get scientific experts to testify in the case. I got Dr. Peter McCullough. We sat down in a Google Meet meeting, and Dr. McCullough agreed to represent all the public servants for free. The widest published cardiologist in the world on COVID issues. He agreed to represent the public servants system for free because he had all the evidence that he could not beat in court. But what do you think happened? Not only McCullough I got Dr. Paul Alexander. He agreed. That's a doctor from Trinidad who's living in America. I got Dr. Herman Edlin from South Africa, who beat the government in South Africa in cases in court dealing with COVID-19 vaccine mandates. And Dr. Edlin, if I recall well, I think the last message I got from Paul Cooper, the lawyer who put me onto him, was that contact him and tell him Paul put you on, Pearl put you onto him. He might not charge you because I recommended you. And the lawyers did in fact they chose to ask for Dr. Herman, because they said they couldn't ask for all. They chose to ask for one whom I recommended, Dr. Herman Edlin, and another doctor that Jomo was talking about, Provatsky or something like that. What do you think happened? The ULP fought against the request in court, and well, I guess their reasonings won out with the judge, so they didn't bring in the experts. But if we had brought in experts to argue the point from that perspective as well, we would have won. Because there's no science, and there's no doctor, and there's no so-called medical professional in this country who could prove against these highly skilled and experienced doctors in America and elsewhere that the COVID-19 vaccine was good for public health and therefore was justified to be mandated for the public servants. None of them could prove that against the evidence that these doctors that I'm dealing with have. And I'm saying it is Dr. Peter McCullough Foundation who broke the news today. Let me read for you what they say here. Okay? All major, this is one of the things that the epidemiologist says. All major artificial intelligence systems, Super Grok, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, independently concluded that vaccines cause autism after analyzing our landmark study. The 30-year lie. You hear how long they lying to us? The 30-year lie that vaccines don't cause autism has officially collapsed. For 30 years and more, the CDC and the FDA has been lying to the world that vaccines don't cause autism in children. You know what happened now? Since the McCullough Foundation put out this release concerning the studies that they recently did, do you know what has happened now? Let me read for you. CDC has changed the guidance on their website. You could go now. I did it myself, and I screenshot. Go now on cdc.gov and you will find a page called Autism and Vaccines. It was updated November 19, 2025. Here what they say now under the key points. The claim, vaccines do not cause autism, is not an evidence-based claim, because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. Are you hearing this? This is the first time CDC is confessing this on their website. They're admitting that all those years, 30 years, they claimed vaccines don't cause autism. They said it is not evidence-based. That is why you can't believe these governments when they come and they tell you, trust the science. We follow the science. Science what? For 30 years, CDC has been lying about science with respect to vaccines and autism. They knew they had no proof to say that vaccines do not cause autism. But they kept saying it anyway. And they fought doctors. They stripped Dr. Andrew Wakefield of his credentials and so on. They destroyed these people's reputations in the public just because they insisted that they had evidence that this was so. But now they come and they just say, oh, well, the claim vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim. So you've been telling us lies based on no scientific evidence, because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. So when people like Simone Kisa Beach had me in her mind as wicked, because I show that there was evidence that vaccines is involved in autism. And God alone knows the evil that you said about me. I heard from people who you told, accusing me of even having wickedness in my heart against your children. Because I say, you should check out your children and what you're doing. Because we know the reality with them. And you were pushing HPV vaccine for Vincentian girls. And I say, if she wants to damage her children, that is her. But you don't follow her and damage your children with no HPV vaccine. And she was vexed with me. Well, you need to go and check your CDC now. Go and check your trusted CDC page now, Simone. Go and check your trusted CDC page now, Miss CMO. This is what I was saying all along, and you fought against me. You tried to destroy my work. To say, oh, because I was with NDP at the time as a senator. Oh, look, the NDP is anti-vaccine. The NDP is anti-vaccine. Oh, look, all you need to deal with Anissa. And all I was doing was answering a question a journalist asked me as a Tusian. I was answering for my church. I wasn't answering for NDP. But you tried to destroy me with that, because you know the general population in St. Vincent, they traditionally accept vaccines. They think it saves lives, and they think it has saved lives. But look, I was right. Here the CDC new guidance now, November 19, 2025. I read again without stopping. Key points. The claim, quote, vaccines do not cause autism, end quote, is not an evidence-based claim because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. Second point, studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities. What? All of them should go to jail? They're admitting that their own health authorities in America have ignored studies that show there's a link between autism and vaccines. Studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities. Meanwhile, we were traduced, called the worst names. Conspiracy theorists, the wicked, they don't care about your children, they want your children to die by not taking vaccines. Vaccines have saved us. Here the next point from CDC. HHS, which is Health and Human Services, has launched a comprehensive assessment of the causes of autism, including investigations on plausible biologic mechanisms and potential causal links. That means they're going to investigate vaccines and give the official word about the link to autism. You know who is responsible in a large way for this too? Thank God for him. The work of Robert Kennedy Jr. Because he promised that he will seek to make things transparent and do investigations. And sometimes some people think he's not working fast enough, but he's under a lot of pressure. And what he is doing is he is saying, let us get to the point where we make them have to do these studies officially. And then we will get the truth exposed. That what we've been saying all along, that indeed childhood vaccines have caused a lot of damage in children, including autism. I have met Robert Kennedy Jr. myself back in 2019 when I attended an HPV vaccine education symposium along with the health secretary of our church, Sister Alyssa J. Singh, Jumahong Singh. We went to, Chicago, and we met Robert Kennedy Jr. at that meeting. The man is a man of conscience when it comes to health freedoms. He did not stay silent. He took a lot of hits. Why his life is probably at risk many times. You know how they've tried to kill the Kennedys a lot. They killed his father, they killed his uncle, who was president at one time, JFK. And they killed his father too, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s father. And he has been standing up to them. And because of that, we have confessions like this. And I am saying, you should take back your word now. We were right. We are vindicated. McCullough Foundation is breaking studies after studies every day. As Sister Creamer asked, who will hold them responsible? But I want to say this as we come to the end, because my life is brief. I have seen the benefits of freedom of information legislation. Because you see all that information we have about Pfizer and FDA and Pfizer trying to hide information for 75 years about the damage of the COVID vaccine. How you think we got those information? We got those information because ICANN, Del Big Tree's ICANN, Informed Consent Action Network, was able to use what you call FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to get the government, to force the government agencies, the government health agencies, to tell the public the facts. No more should we settle for that situation in Semis and the Grenadines, where you pass legislation and you don't enforce them. No more should we settle for the lack of the enforcement of freedom of information legislation in this country. Those of you who campaigning for votes and saying, hold your government accountable, hold their feet to the fire. They work for you. You are their employers. You put them there and they're accountable to you. Let me tell you something. You want to be accountable to the country? If you get into office, one, and Issa Batiste tell you so, pass freedom of information legislation and enforce it. Make it a priority. Make it that anybody in the public could write to the government under the law and demand that you give the information we need. We want to know how many people have died from the vaccines. How many did you vaccinated? And how many died that you vaccinated? We want to know. We want to know the change in the number of deaths before the vaccine, 10 years before, and since the vaccine. We want to see the stats. No agency must hog up the information and hide it up. And when people write into you, refuse to answer questions, as Sister Anne show in her book, you refuse to even reply to the email. No government agency must be allowed to do that again, ever. Give us the freedom of information legislation and enforce it. But another piece of information we need, another piece of legislation we need, is something called a whistleblower legislation, Whistleblower Act. You see, it was because of whistleblower legislation that people like William Thompson, let me go back to this post that I had made a few years back, when I posted about the book Vaccine Whistleblower, Exposing Autism Research Fraud at the CDC by Kevin Barry Esquire, forward by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., prefaced by Dr. Boyd E. Haley. You know, it was a whistleblower in the CDC who revealed recorded conversation with CDC Dr. William Thompson, where he admitted the CDC knows that autism is caused by vaccines. But you know what happens when you have government workers who inside their ministries and they're seeing evil taking place, they're seeing corruption taking place, and they well want to expose it because they're hurting for the people. They know that the public needs to know this, but they can't, or they are afraid, because they're afraid of the repercussions. They're afraid they would get persecuted. They're afraid they would get victimized. It happened to me. I stood up during the referendum and look what they did with me. You really serious about accountability? You really serious about the people holding your feet to the fire? You really serious about the people holding you accountable and making sure you work for them? Then I dare you, pass 2 pieces of legislation as priority if you win. 1, freedom of information legislation with the relevant regulations. 2, whistleblower protection legislation, so that if any public servant in this country, anyone who works in a government agency, sees corruption, sees evil, and wants to let the public know, they could blow the whistle and know they will not lose their jobs for it. They will not be victimized for it. They will not be persecuted for it. If you are serious, make that promise and do it if you get into office. If God allows it. He's the one who puts up and he's the one who takes down. Don't lift up your hand. Scriptures say that. So I am saying to you, Vincentians, as an associate director of the Tusian Institute for Religious Liberty, somebody who is concerned with the protection of the inalienable or God-given rights and freedoms of the people, which is the duty of government to do. Protect those rights. They didn't give them. God gave them. But governments must protect your rights. And I'm saying to you, if you want government to protect your rights going forward, you need to demand freedom of information legislation to be enforced in this land, where you could write in as a common citizen and ask any question about the functioning of government, and they have to give you the stats, they have to give you the information lawfully. And you need to request whistleblower protection legislation for public servants going forward. You say you're going to give back the people who suffered under the Maxine mandate their jobs. Good. You're going to compensate them. Good. Well, when they go back there, they are conscientious people. If you do stupidness, if you get into office, they're going to talk to. Protect them. Protect them from any kind of temptation to victimize them again in the future. Protect them. Let it be known that you have nothing to hide, and therefore there will be whistleblower protection legislation to ensure that the public servants can help to keep the government accountable. If we're serious, these are the kinds of things that need to be done. You wouldn't find Anissa Batiste jumping up in red and yellow. Not today. You won't find Anissa Batiste advocating for the voting of this or that. I have done my job. I do my duty of exposing evil and fighting for the protection of the rights and freedoms of the people. And I am saying, I am doing it again by saying, new administration must give the people freedom of information legislation enforced and whistleblower protection legislation enforced. Please, if you're serious about not wanting certain evils to be repeated again, if government changes, demand this as a priority. Demand these things as a priority. There's a third piece, that should be enforced. But I wouldn't say much about that now, but it is integrity legislation. The current administration try to fool you and say, oh, Anissa Batiste and them said no to the Constitution, and because they said no to the Constitution, we couldn't get the Integrity Commission. Foolishness. We showed then you could just go to Parliament and pass integrity legislation and set up a commission. You don't need constitution reform to do that. So if they're serious, and if anybody's serious, you want to lead with integrity, you're not hiding assets, you're not hiding things, go and put the integrity legislation in place and let everybody see who you are, what you own, and deal with the kind of corruptions, avoid the kind of corruptions we're seeing happening today, where people own house there and there and bank account here and how much money there and there and there. Be serious. So if you want, you could add that as the third one. But I end again. 1, we need freedom of information legislation enforced. 2, we need whistleblower protection legislation. 3, integrity legislation with an integrity commission. If you're serious, you will do these things. Why? For the protection of the inalienable rights and freedoms of all the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I tell you, I am waiting, because you see that Freedom of Information Act, I have plenty requests to be made. Plenty. The world has changed, my dear people. No more covering up and lies. Everything is being exposed. You can't hide now. You can't call us conspiracy theorists. You can't get away with that talk anymore. We were right. We have vindicated. The very CDC had to confess just in November 19th here, just Wednesday gone. They've been lying for 30 years and telling you vaccines don't cause autism. The truth is they never did any study to show. They have ignored studies that show the link. We were right. We were right. And I thank God we held our positions despite the persecution, all the name calling, all the wickedness. They will rubbish you and destroy your reputation in this land. They will destroy your opportunity to get jobs after they're finished with you. And all the while, they were the ones telling lies. Let me tell you something. No country could move forward without proper research. And you have to listen to your people. Let me tell you something, Vincentians. Do not trust any government with your health. Trust God. Do your own research, because too often governments tend to trust the agencies that are established out there, which they get favors from. The CDC, the FDA, the PAHO, the CAFA. But you cannot depend upon them alone, because the proof is in the pudding. They have lied to us for years. They have lied to us for years. You know who I follow and listen to and insist that they must be given a voice in world health issues? The World Council for Health, WCH. Check them out. Just recently I got a message from one of their leading doctors, Dr. Tess Lowry, thanking me and commending us for a video we did, a 1-minute video showing, addressed to the governments of the world. We suffered a lot in the pandemic because our governments followed these agencies that were lying to us. And when we were showing them that the agencies were lying, they don't want to hear anything, because they tend to big up, they tend to exalt and put on a pedestal these agencies. But you need to listen to your people, and you need to do your own research. Do like the Zambian government. Do your own research before you put things into your children. Governments, do your own research before you put things into your people. Because in the end, what you're going to say, is the CDC that made me do it? Is the FDA that made me do it? We didn't elect the CDC. We didn't elect the FDA. The people didn't vote for PAHO. They voted for you. So please, take these things into consideration. Share the live when you get a chance, even though others may not see it. No, share it. And hold your feet to the fire. If you say you want change and you want a new government. But remember, new government is new administration too. So if even who you don't want goes there, is new administration too, still hold your feet to the fire, because they cannot fight against the evidence. They cannot fight against the evidence. May God's will be done. I love you. Grace and peace. The truth has been vindicated. Glory to Yahweh. Amen.